Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bloom Talks. Here we are again on Thursday afternoon at 12:30 p.m. We're going to be here with you almost every single Thursday afternoon at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, except not on Thanksgiving next week. And we're delighted to be here with you to talk about you don't really fall in love. And we're going to investigate what it is that you do fall into. So we fall into infatuation, and we want you to bring us your questions, bring us your concerns. We love it when you interact with us. That's the wonderful thing about the Facebook Live, is that if you bring us your questions, we can address them. So I'm here to tell you that I was a romantic, and I still have a very strong stream of romanticism in me, but I have matured and I have learned that infatuation, although there's some love mixed in there, mostly it is just wild ideas that we're making up about this person could be the one. And in the absence of knowing who they really are, we can weave quite a fantastic story that we fill in all the holes of what we don't know about them with our Prince Charming and our Princess Charming fantasy. And so who we're loving at that point is only slightly resembling who they truly are. That love grows over time and that we co-create that together. And we have to go through some hard times and some disappointments and some disillusionment until we find out who we really are. Because it's most natural to have our best foot forward in the early stages of the relationship because, you know, we want it to work out. We think this other person is so marvelous and they may have some really marvelous things about them. So we want to dress for success and we want to present ourselves well. And we usually have a few flaws, a little, insecurities hidden behind that fancy image that we present. And so when the infatuation begins to wear off, that's when it really starts to get interesting. That's when we can get down to who we really are and who that other person really is. And then when you're flowing the love back and forth, it is a deeper, more meaningful and informed kind of love. So it's some work. It's some work. It's a labor of love. But the payoffs, they're tremendous.
Yeah. Just ask Linda. She knows. I mean, it took her some work to get to that place with us. But yeah, it can be challenging because the tendency is that it doesn't take us long to figure out whether or not we're attracted to somebody. Maybe 4 or 5 seconds can be enough sometimes. Sometimes it might take a little bit longer. But that's an experience that we know and we recognize, oh, well, that's somebody that I really would like to get to know a little bit better. But like Linda said, love doesn't come automatically immediately. The feeling can come right away. The desire can come. What we project, what we imagine the other person to be can fuel that, and it doesn't take long to get into a mode where we've decided whether this is somebody that we really want to favorably, positively impress, or not. And if we do, we don't consciously think about how can I project the image that I think this person would appreciate or would be attracted to. It just kind of happens automatically once we recognize that feeling in us. It just happens. So love is something a little different than that. Infatuation literally means, it comes from the term fatuous, and fatuous means delusional. It means you're not in touch with reality. It means that you're relating to something that you're imagining and may not be true. So when we're infatuated, we're seeing this person through eyes that really have some distortion in them.
And I just want to make sure that everybody knows that there are hormones and oxytocin and endorphins running through your bloodstream, so we're a bit drugged. Do you know it's nature's trick to make us procreate and to keep the species going? So we're not exactly in our right mind. Not exactly.
Yeah. And, nature cares a lot less about the quality of our relationships, whether they're meaningful and fulfilling and purposeful, than whether or not we get the job done. The job is to sustain the species and to see to it that we continue to exist and continue to flourish and to thrive and to grow. So that can happen very quickly. That desire can come up, and then we've got to make some choices at some point about whether or not this is something that we want to continue to develop between the two of us.
So please don't get me wrong here. I'm not raining on the infatuation parade. I think the infatuation stage is gorgeous, and we're walking on a pink cloud, and we're kind of high, and we've never been so happy. And I say, ride it to the dunes, enjoy it. But eventually, we're going to have to leave that Garden of Eden. And when we do, I just don't want people to think, oh, I must have gotten the wrong one. Because every couple has to leave the Garden of Eden at some point and get down to the real work of relationship. And some people don't like to hear that. They don't want to think that it's work. If I just find the right person, I know it's all going to flow. We're just going to love each other, and we're not going to have any differences. Or if we ever have any small differences, we'll get over it so fast because we love each other so much. So inevitably, there is going to be the fall from grace. There is going to be the person who looks so angelic might start to look demonic. That's part of the process. And they really weren't a complete angel, and they're not a complete devil, even when you're in the disillusionment stage. It's just seeing more of what we haven't been willing to see before.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about infatuation, that when we're in this stage, it's not just the person who is attracted to the other person that is infatuated. Both people are affected by it, because while I want you to see the best in me, or what I think you would most appreciate, the person on the other side has some blind spots too, because they may not want to see the negative in me either. So it's kind of a conspiracy here where I've got kind of the person on the receiving end has got some degree of resistance to seeing the truth in the other person, because they've got a positive feeling and they don't want to mess with it. When you have a certain initial assessment about something that you get attached to, there's always going to be a certain amount of resistance to seeing it any differently than that.
It's like a version of don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah. It's like no news is good news. I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to see that. And so we're both kind of co-conspiring. It's all unconscious, but we're both in some ways distorting what's there, and we're also limiting our willingness to perceive what isn't consistent with the way we want to see things. This is called confirmation bias. It's like when you decide, or when you begin to believe something or have a strong attachment or desire for it, you tend to see more clearly any information and accept it that is consistent with your view. And you tend to deny or reject or just not even see anything that doesn't fit that.
So when you start showing up for the relationship with a wider band of acceptability, then you start to see the parts that maybe aren't so gorgeous in the other person, and you risk revealing some of the parts of yourself that aren't so gorgeous about the other person, about yourself. But this is getting to the place where the relationship can deepen. You know, when you don't have your images on. And we think that that's a very exciting time, although there's some disappointment in it. And some people leave relationships that have perfectly fabulous potential because they get into that disillusionment and they see that, oh, there's going to be a little argument here. Oh, there's going to be some disappointment or some hurt or some misunderstanding. It's going to be some work. And so they toss in the towel and they say, you know, I don't want to play. And sometimes they don't even make a graceful exit. They just disappear. But we say, see if you could stay present and see if you could name the feelings of what you're experiencing and see if you can't go to a deeper place. We sometimes refer to this as shadow work, the parts that we've been keeping hidden in the dark shadows, that we retrieve those parts and we start to allow more of who we are be seen to each other. Because it's only making that descent into the dark, kind of scary, uncomfortable places where we can make the ascent. And then when we come up after knowing more clearly who we are and who they are, then not only the dark shadow can be a part of our relationship for us to use, but the golden shadow can emerge. That thing that we glimpsed in the infatuation stage, when the visionary is very active about who we could become with this person to inspire and support us, and who we could bring out in each other, the best of who we could be, that's when it starts to manifest. But this is not easy to do. This has got some prices that need to be paid and some work that needs to be done and some, you know, some uncomfortable moments that need to be lived through.
Well, they're not all uncomfortable, but they do tend to come up more when you move from the infatuation stage into the stage that we refer to as the disillusionment stage. That is, that we are we begin to see through our perception or idealization of the other person and see that, you know, they're not, like Linda said, we haven't gotten the perfect person that we initially thought we might have gotten. And this can be a little bit disappointing, but in a way, it's good to see that because, you know, we know that there's more to them than what they're putting out, and that they know that there's more to us because we're both trying to make a favorable impression. Mm-hmm. And so it's necessary to see who else is there, because if I'm thinking about getting more involved with somebody, then I really want to know, or I need to know, whether I want to or not, who it is that I'm getting involved with. And one of the distinctions between disillusionment stage and the stage in which we begin begin to really feel love, between infatuation and love, the difference has to do with knowing the other person and having them know us, being willing to expose and express aspects of ourselves that we had been careful to try to conceal out of the concern that if we revealed them, that they may disapprove. So when we move into that stage of being able to see who else is there besides this image that, you know, we naturally put up, we are entering into the beginning stages for the potential for real love, because we're taking our blinders down and we're seeing more of who it is that's there.
So we sometimes refer to the process of coming out from behind the image to get more real and authentic is putting your worst foot forward. You know, in the infatuation stage, you're busy with your image And so you're putting your best foot forward. And I'm not recommending that you do it on the first date or the second date or the third date. You want to be careful about when you start to reveal more truth about yourself, but early on.
Most likely it's going to happen whether you want it to or not. So, because when we tend to feel more comfortable with somebody, then we kind of relax the inhibitions that we keep on ourselves when we're trying really hard to create that impression. And so it kind of leaks out,
And we're different than some of the therapists in our field and workshop leaders who are teaching about relationship in our field, who really say you should keep your best foot forward and keep your image on for the first several months. So that's a long time to be sending your image to the relationship. I'm really more practical and no nonsense than that. I think it's good for people early on in the first few months of the relationship to know who they're getting there and whether they want to invest time and effort with this person. And if you see that we're all a mixed bag and they're a mixed bag, and you see their mixed baggedness is acceptable limits for you, do you know that you want to put some work in? Because there is going to be some work in the relationship. There is going to be some discomfort sometimes. And of course, we want the joy and the happiness and the learning and the excitement and the pleasure to outweigh the work. But sometimes when people get to the work part of the relationship, they think something's wrong. So we're just trying to normalize that. Every couple has to put some work in.
So I think it might be a good idea for us to just say a little bit about what the quote work is or can be. So many of us have heard that you're going to create a good relationship. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of work. You hear that enough, and you wonder, am I really up for this? What is the work anyway? The word work itself doesn't exactly suggest pleasurable experiences. I go to work today, So
I got to do my homework.
Yeah, right. So let's just talk a little bit about it. I'm still looking for a better term for that, because the truth is that after you have been doing the quote work for a while, it no longer feels heavy or burdensome. It doesn't feel like work. Does it feel like work when you brush your teeth in the morning? Does it feel like work when you enjoy a good meal and put some healthy food in your body? It's not, but it does require some effort. Mm-hmm. And so the work that we're talking about has to do with the challenge of being in a situation where we really have a desire for something, which is the continuation or the deepening of a relationship. And we have an idea of how this person can best fulfill our desire, how they need to be and behave and speak in a way that will bring to us the experience that we really want. When we fall in love with somebody, when we really feel love, what we're actually experiencing is the feeling of how much I enjoy being with you. So what I love isn't necessarily just you, but it's the way you make me feel when I'm in your presence. And I want this to continue. I don't want to lose it. I don't want you to, stop being the way you are.
Ken Key says when we say I love you, what we're really saying is I love myself when I'm with you. Yeah. So we're feeling, uplifted. We're feeling really alive. We're feeling like we're coming into our own, that we're realizing our potential. We're in our fullness. But to be at that place where we feel it more consistently, there's some qualities that we need to grow in ourselves to be eligible for the great relationship, like courage to speak truth, about tough subjects, like when we're disappointed or we're frustrated. Like patience, to go over some of the material over and over and over again, because some of the issues are so, fraught with feelings and old associations and old wounds, that we have to have patience to do it. We have to have commitment, to stay in the game, even when it's not always so fun. And tolerance and acceptance and compassion and forgiveness. So these qualities.
That's a lot, man.
It's a tall order.
I have to do all that stuff?
Over time.
How much time do I have to get it done?
We've got plenty of years together to practice. And we can get really good at it if we have that focused attention. And the game isn't for everybody, although most people do want to have a long-term committed romantic partnership. And so this is how you earn your way into love. You don't just fall in. You earn your way in. You grow it together.
Yeah. Is it my turn now?
Yeah, it's your turn.
I don't know. I don't have really anything to add to that. I think that kind of covers it.
Well, are you glad you've done the work? We've done so much work.
Am I done?
Oh no, we're going to continue working.
You said that I'm glad that I'm done. I've done the work.
That you've done as much as you've done. I'm really glad that you've done as much as you've done. You've come a long way, baby. I like to think I have too. I think it's way worth it.
Yeah. But then there are those times along the way when you do tend to wonder, is it really worth it?
Been there, done that.
Does it have to be
I've wondered.
This difficult? And one of the things that I found out is that it's not always really difficult for everybody. There are some lucky couples out there, and they, for some reason, their relationship hasn't required them to do a lot of work. They just kind of fall more easily into the kinds of behaviors more naturally.
I think they're in the minority.
Oh, they're really no. I mean, I've only met like 2 of them so far.
No, they're more than that.
But there are some that exist. But for the most of us, for the rest of us, it is going to take some work, and it's not just whether or not there is work to do. It's what is the nature of your work. When we work with couples, what we always want to do is we want to help them to be clearer about what their particular individual work is, because there's no generic answer to the question of what is it that the work is. It deals with the development of all kinds of different qualities, neutralizing practices that maybe have been appropriate or necessary or defensive in the past that are no longer serving you. And it has to do with developing new practices and engaging in them on a regular basis in order to overcome some of the old habits. Yeah. So
I want to just say hi to Susie. Susie just sent a comment, and I'm delighted that you're with us. So I just want to speak to this practicing. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Do you know that you practice? It does become easier. It does become more fun. It does become more natural. It does become a part of our repertoire. And the payoffs are tremendous. And I don't want you to take our word for it. I want you to try it out from your own experience. Look to your own experience and see if you haven't cultivated some qualities that have really served you in your relationship, and your relationship is much improved out of that efforting. Look to your own experience if you see that you've become a more conscious combatant when you have differences, that you do it with grace, you do it with finesse, you do it with respect, you do it in a genteel way so that you're speaking about your tender feelings and you're not such a judgment machine as you might have been like us when we first came into our relationship. Look to your own experience if you've gained better negotiation skills in being able to both of you have your needs met. Not all the time, but most of the time. Because if you look to your own experience, you may see how what we're inviting you into, really to keep this process going and keep looking for your growing edge. What is it that I need to develop in myself? What is my work to do? How might I be a greater contribution to this partnership? That would be, that would be enlivening for your partnership.
One short kind of final thing before we finish up. Try not to get caught up in the commonly held notion that because we have been a certain way in the past for so many years or decades, that's who we are, and we're not going to change. Mm-hmm. Because we can't change, because it's the way we've always been. And I want to challenge you to challenge that belief, because we have so much evidence with so many couples that we've worked with, so many people, and in our own relationship mm-hmm. with each other, that although it can seem impossible, miracles can happen. People who have lived their lives with certain patterns or possessed by certain defensive mechanisms can, out of a clear and positive intention and the willingness to practice, can neutralize some of those old patterns of judgment, of criticism, of blame, mm-hmm. of manipulation, of intimidation, of dishonesty. These things can change. So don't short sell yourself or your partner when it comes to this. When you have that thought that, this is not going to work because mm-hmm. it's always been this way. He's always been this way. I've always been this way. The past doesn't have to predict the future.
I'm totally with you about this. Our childhood does not have to determine who we are in our adulthood. We can grow past that. If they got off to a weak start, we can have a strong middle and ending. And our adult relationships don't have to determine who we are going forward if we reach high and we're willing to be intentional and committed about going for the gold. And also, if you happen to be in a rough place in your relationship, that will dispel the myth that it just gets better and better and better. It's up and down. And so if you're in a rough place, there may be something really important that is wanting to work through you, heal through you, grow through you. Look deeply into what that is instead of be so despairing about it's not as golden as it used to be, because that just might be the breakthrough waiting to happen. So we are not going to be with you on Thanksgiving next week. We're going to be here 2 weeks from today at 12:30. And Charlie's going to tell you, we're going to give you some guidance for your holiday season at Christmas.
Okay. So the title of our next Bloom Talk is Bringing More Joy and Less Stress into Your Holiday Family Gatherings. Uh-huh. Some of you out there, probably very few of you, sometimes experience less than idyllic circumstances when you're home with your family for holidays. So we're going to have several pointers that will definitely serve you to create more joy and less stress when you mm-hmm. have that wonderful opportunity.
Now, there may be friends of yours that are leaping into your mind right now that they could really use it to deal with their difficult family members. Tell them to join us on Facebook, follow us on Facebook, and tune in 2 weeks. Thank you for being with us. We really enjoy doing these, and we'll look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks, but have a fantastic Thanksgiving in the meanwhile.
Adios.